Hello, and welcome to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. This is our map day, and this is where we go into a little more detail in the content that we are covering this week. And so I'm going to send it right on over to Victoria to get us started. Victoria?
Hello, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for coming and joining us. So, as we said in the compass yesterday, we're going back to some of the basics and we're starting to look through a slightly different lens at the key components of writing a story. So I wanted to start with ground zero, which is your protagonist. Your protagonist is generally the character whose point of view is driving the story. Now, I often get the question from my students, can I have two protagonists? Well, you certainly can. However, there are some rules. Now, we all know that rules are meant to be broken, but you have to know the rules before you can break them. So, usually, if you feature more than one protagonist, let's say you have a couple, right? So you've got two people that are joined together in some way. So they're a couple, they come as a pair, as a unit. Usually you want to have one of those people be a little more prominent in the story, and the other person is always slightly subsequent to them. So you notice in the points of view and the drivers of the story that one person seems to be the person on whom the focus stays. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't pass it back and forth, but usually if it's a couple, you want to focus primarily on one if you can. Now, you can use components of their relationship as a way to move the story forward. So perhaps person A starts out as the most prominent, the focal point, the point of view. Then as you get into, let's say, the midpoint of the story, person B begins to level up, to become more evolved and more prominent in that point of view as a character. So maybe that's the trajectory of your story, is person B surpasses person A. So you get kind of an X forming. So the person A has a bit of a downturn and person B has a bit of an upturn. Those are the decisions that you're going to make when we get to plot modeling. I'm going to put a pin in that because we're going to talk about that later. But suffice it to say, what you're looking for when you start thinking about that protagonist is, what does their journey look like? Is it an up journey that ends on a win? Is it a downfall that ends lesser than where they began? Is it a static journey where they go through a series of experiences that don't fundamentally change them? They kind of stay on the same level. Those are the kinds of decisions that I'm talking about. You want to know from the beginning what kind of story you want to tell. Now, does that mean you have to have it all plotted and mapped out? I hear you, pantsers, you're already throwing a fit. No, you don't have to have it plotted and mapped out. You just have to have something to navigate by. So, what exactly is a protagonist? What are the features of this character? Well, as I said, it can be one person, a couple, it could even be a group. Think of a Scooby gang. Everyone kind of plays their role and moves the story forward to solve the mystery. So however you define that protagonist, or in my book, I call it a protagonistic unit. Zettelkasten for fiction writers is coming. Spoilers, I'll give you no more, but it's coming. Whatever that protagonist or that unit is, how are you going to move them forward? What do they need to feature as part of their character to move the story along? Well, first of all, understand what direction they're going. Is their story an up story with a win? Is it a down story with a fall? Or is it static? Secondly, know that they're going to experience some kind of change. Now, it doesn't have to be a major transformation. You could be writing a quiet, meditative story. But know what kind of discovery, what kind of shift are they going to experience? What thing are they going to notice? Or what's going to pull their attention or their focus? In a quiet meditative story, it can really be that simple. This person is just making this notice, making this discovery. Something is grabbing their focus and they think about it and they have some kind of a realization. It can be that simple. It's up to you. But knowing from the beginning what that's going to look like can really help keep that story focused, especially when you get into the middle. We like to call the muddle in the middle, or you get in the weeds, you're not sure where you're going. Having that first principle primary in your mind, knowing where's my protagonist headed, can help you right through those things when you get stuck. Finally, I would say, think about, are they going to make some kind of a change? Now, this is where what Kathleen is going to talk to you about the character traits becomes so important. Because often your change is something very subtle. It's something simple. You don't have to have bombs blowing up and conflict everywhere. It can be something internal that allows for a change or a shift in a character. Maybe this character goes from careless to grateful, right? See how that feels? They make that shift. Maybe they go from reckless to responsible, okay? So they're just making a shift within themselves that drives the story through to the end. So I will leave you there thinking about your protagonist. Is it going to be a single person, a couple, or a unit? And then what kind of journey are you going to take them on? Where are they going to begin and where are they going to end? With just those simple mile markers, you can write an entire short story, you can write an entire novel, you can write an entire series, just having a good firm sense of who this person is, where they begin, and where they're going to end up. So that is your protagonist. Get cracking on those notes and think about who this person is, and then next time we will move on to the next major player in our story. With that, I'll throw it to Kathleen.
Oh, thank you so much, Victoria. The protagonist is such a fun character to write because that's the character that your readers are going to fall in love with. That's the one that you really are going to root for throughout the story. So it's very uplifting to be thinking about your that's your hero, your heroine, or even just the poor person who's stuck in a mess and has to dig his way out. So it's really fun for our readers to and fun for us to write those. Well, this is where I'm going to start focusing in one at a time on each of the character traits. We only have 2 lessons in a month where we talk about ideas, and so we're going to break up the coverage a little bit into 2 different sections. So in the first section of today, we're going to talk about, well, what is the character trait of humility? What does it look like? How do you notice humility when you look at the character? What does it look like? And a little bit, we're going to talk about the voice of the struggle. You know, there's 3 voices in a character trait, and we're going to talk about the voice of the struggle because it's the struggle of the character trait that is unique to the character trait. Almost every character trait, when you have a victory state, you have a certain amount of joy. That's going to be common to all of them. If you're experiencing in the lost state of a character trait, there's almost always chaos, there's often confusion, and these kinds of things are true of many different character traits. So if you really want to know what's unique about this one character trait, you have to look at the struggle. And in the looking at the struggle, we'll look at some other character traits that you might confuse with this character trait, and we'll see how their struggles are different than the struggles of the character trait that we're looking on right now. And so we're going to start with the humblest of all of the character traits, humility. So we have to say, okay, what on earth is humility? Well, humility is very simply when your character feels comfortable within himself. He doesn't have to look around for comparisons to decide who he is or whether he's worth something or not worth something. He's just comfortable. We often talk about there being an animal model for the character traits because sometimes when we look at the society of animals, it's easier to see something in isolation that's harder to see in human beings. Well, the character trait of humility has its animal model, an animal that's a member of the pack. He's just comfortable being a member of the pack. Doesn't have to be the alpha, doesn't have to be the one that's being antagonized and rooted out. He's just a comfortable member of the pack. So humility is, in definition, it's being able to be comfortable with yourself. So where does that turn into a struggle? It turns into a struggle in 2 ways. Why 2 ways? Well, give you a clue. It's a balance trait. Humility is a balance trait, and all of the balance traits have more than one kind of a struggle. Well, so what would be the kinds of character struggles that you could give your character? Well, for one, you could create a character who's a little bit on the snooty side, you know? Well, this character who's a bit on the snooty side might have a problem with judging himself or herself to be a little bit better than those other pack animals. So there's a struggle with humility going on. The character might even not even know that he's struggling with humility. He's just not in a victory state. And when you listen to the voices in his head, you'll hear that too. But we cover the voices next time. We're talking just about the struggle this time. So what's the other kind of struggle with humility? The other kind of struggle with humility is, oh, I'm worthless. I'm not as good as those other pack animals. I'm not as fast as they are. I don't get to the kill as quickly. I'm worthless. And that is the opposite kind of a struggle. So whenever the character is struggling with what am I worth? What's my value? How good am I as a member of this group? They're struggling with humility. Now let's compare that with another character trait that is often used at the same time, meekness. So how do we contrast meekness with humility? Meekness has everything to do with where our character gives his focus. Where does attention go for this character? With meekness, the character is looking out at others, keeping an eye out for the needs of others. So meekness is all about attention getting, whether he needs it or doesn't need it. So of course they kind of come together in a constellation, because if a person is comfortable within themselves, then they're free to look out to others and be able to see them and see their needs. They're not all busy needing their own self to be aggrandized and made to feel that they're important, which is the other character trait that comes up in comparison with humility. Sometimes people feel that, for example, modesty is another character trait that can be confused with humility. Well, modesty is the other character trait that has to do with attention. In modesty, it is all about whether the character needs the attention of others. And you see, if the person does not have humility in place, where they're just comfortable with who they are, they may need to seek attention. Well, what does that attention do for them? Well, the snooty character, the one with the nose in the air, that character needs others to look at them and say how great they are and how wonderful they are and how special they are, because otherwise they're not going to believe they're important. If the character understood that they didn't have to have those character traits to be just of value, they could relax, but they can't, because they don't have humility in a nice, comfortable, grounded state. They're struggling with humility. And if you think about it, and if you look at some of the other character traits, humility is a very important character trait to have to be able to do any of the empathy traits, because if the character is all stuck focusing in on himself, then he doesn't have eyes for others. That shows up very much with when we talked about meekness, but it also comes up in any other empathy character trait, because a very seriously damaged self-esteem is a character that's going to have a hard time being in an empathetic relationship with others. So play around with it, play around with this character trait, and next time we'll take a look at the other two states of the character trait, and we'll hear the voices of the character trait. Anything that you'd like to add to wrap us up, Victoria?
No, I think this is a great kickoff. I'm just so excited to dive back into some of these things that we have already visited and just look at them in a bit of a different way and start to combine some of the skills that we've gained along the way and push our stories forward. So I think we're going to have a blast.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And come on back and join us next week, or even better, hop on over to LiLLiPub and join the conversation in fusion writing and in the Circle for Character Traits. You've got two great places to join the discussion, and join our Zoom call on Saturday, where you'll have a chance to read the writing of others who are in fusion writing, and also have a chance to post your own writing for commentary. It's a great opportunity, and it won't last forever. So come join us. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.